Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Preet Bharara, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today we announce federal charges against three top... I don't think they like that. Against three top international criminals. As alleged in the unsealed documents, these men ran a modern-day bank robbery ring. But as we have seen with increasing frequency, their bank heists required neither a mask nor a gun, but a clever computer program and an internet connection. In an information age update on Willie Sutton, cyber criminals target banks too, because that's where the money still is. As alleged, this ring conceived, developed, and spread a notorious bit of computer malware known in cyber circles as the Gozi virus. The Gozi virus is essentially a Trojan horse for computers, narrowly focused and specifically designed to infect computers of unsuspecting users to steal their online banking credentials. As we allege, the Gozi virus has infected at least 1 million computers around the world, including 40,000 in the United States and many more in Germany, Great Britain, Poland, France, Finland, Italy, Turkey, and elsewhere. And it has led to the theft of tens of millions of dollars from bank accounts of individuals and businesses. Specifically today, we announced charges against three men who were at the top of this criminal cyber ring. The first is Nikita Kuzmin, also known by the online nickname 76. He is a Russian national who conceived of the Gozi virus and ran a business that rented out or leased the virus to other people. He was essentially the idea man. Kuzmin has pled guilty to serious federal cybercrime charges, and he has been cooperating with the government and assisting in our investigation. Second, Denis Chalovsky, known by the online nickname Miami. He is a Latvian national who wrote some of the computer code that made the Gozi virus so effective. He was arrested in Latvia last month. Third, Mihai Paunescu, also known perhaps appropriately by the online nickname Virus. He is a Romanian national who ran a so-called bulletproof hosting service that enabled cyber criminals throughout the world to spread the Gozi virus and other malware to commit numerous other cyber crimes as well, and I'll get to those in a moment. Paunescu was arrested in Romania in November of 2012 and was indicted in this district last week. The charges against all three of these defendants were unsealed earlier today, as you know. Now let me just very briefly describe a little bit about what this scheme was about and what the allegations in the charging documents are. As alleged, in 2005, Nikita Kuzmin, the first defendant I mentioned, first conceived of the Gozi virus, a malicious computer code or malware that could be used to steal the bank account information of individuals and businesses on a large scale. Kuzmin created a list of technical specifications to make the Gozi virus effective, but he of course could not do it alone. He needed specialists with expertise, and he needed a forum to market and sell his product. If you take a look at the chart to my right, it basically lays out the scheme as set forth in the various charging documents. As I mentioned, Nikita Kuzmin, who we essentially describe as the mastermind of the entire operation, conceived of the virus and figured out what the specifications should be, but he wasn't a person who was able to write the source code himself, so he essentially got another individual who's referred to as a co-conspirator in the documents to write the source code. Beyond that, what was clever about this operation, as alleged in the charging documents, was that they would modify the virus for particular uses of various cyber criminals depending on how they wanted to use it and how they wanted to steal money from banks. So he would further develop a relationship with other people, including the individual that we describe as Miami, to do something called web injects, which I'll describe in a moment, and is depicted on the chart to my left. After that was all done, the folks at the top of the scheme needed to figure out a way to get the virus to the actual other cyber criminals who were going to be able to use it to steal money from banks. And that was done over basically what was an internet bazaar for criminals, cyber criminals, called 76 service. And in that forum, cyber criminals could either buy the software, buy the computer program, or lease it, sometimes for prices up to $50,000, plus a cut of the profits back to the mastermind. And then they were the ones who would actually send out spam to infect unsuspecting computers and then steal bank information and thereby steal bank money from banks from unsuspecting individuals. But of course, in order to be able to do that, as alleged in the charging documents, you needed to have a cloak, some kind of cover. And that's where the third defendant we mentioned come in, Mr. Panescu, aka Virus. He was basically the host of what we call a bulletproof host. And as the name implies, that was a place where individuals could send forth spam and other nefarious emails to unsuspecting computers from behind a cloak of anonymity. So it would be very difficult for people to trace back where that was coming from. And I'll spend a couple of minutes more on that in a moment so you have a better sense of what that was. So at that point, everything is set, and individuals would get spam email from behind the cloak of a bulletproof host. And if a person decided to open up a spam email, and typically it was a PDF, as we described in the indictments, that PDF would be opened, and then the individual computer would become infected, and basically there was a keylogging mechanism in the virus, and it would specifically try to find out if the computer was visiting an e-banking website, and it would make sure to take the information, including password information and other information, so that bank money could be stolen. And then that bank information went back to the cyber criminals, and the money went back to cyber criminals, as you might imagine. One more thing about the web inject. As you see to the chart to my left, one of the things that the defendants did in this case, or at least one defendant was hired to do in this case, was to create a fake welcome page when an individual would go to his or her bank account. Instead of getting the legitimate welcome page, which you see on the left of that chart, they would get a false welcome page, which would then prompt them to give very sensitive information, including, as you see on the chart, social security information, date of birth information, and PIN numbers for their ATM cards, all as part of the charade behind the bulletproof server, so people could figure out what bank information they needed so they could steal the maximum amount possible, as we allege. Back for 1 second to the bulletproof host, which I think is an important concept and something that helps people understand why this is such a difficult thing to track and such a difficult thing to prosecute and a difficult thing to investigate. So a lot of kudos to people here who were able to do it. Notwithstanding its sophisticated and nefarious design, the Ghozi virus, as I've mentioned already, would never have been so lucrative for cyber criminals and so damaging to victims were it not for people like Panescu, one of the defendants in this case. As part of the hosting service, he allegedly provided critical online infrastructure, such as computer servers and IP addresses, to cyber criminals anonymously so that they could commit all sorts of cyber crimes, including, as we've mentioned, the spreading of the Ghozi virus with little fear of detection by law enforcement. In effect, Panescu allegedly functioned as an internet service provider for criminals, one that would protect them from prosecution. That's why his service was called bulletproof. Panescu rented servers and IP addresses from legitimate internet service providers, and in turn, Panescu allegedly rented the servers and IP addresses out then to cyber criminals so that they could remain hidden and anonymous to legitimate internet service providers, private sector security professionals, and above all, law enforcement. If law enforcement, which is always poking around in these things, would ask a question about a suspicious IP address, Panescu could just say, "You're right, I'll cancel it." But then, as we allege in the documents, Panescu could just give the cyber criminal a new IP address, unbeknownst to law enforcement. And so with Panescu's help, cyber criminals committed all sorts of crimes, not just the spreading of the Ghozi virus, but spreading other malware like the Zeus Trojan, conducting distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks, and sending out harmful spam. As alleged, Panescu then served as both a lookout and a cover. Now let me remind everyone that Chalovsky and Panescu are of course presumed innocent, unless and until they are proven guilty. We are seeking their extradition from the two countries where they are from and expect their cases will proceed in Manhattan federal court. Now, it took nefarious international collaboration to unleash the full destructive force of the Ghozi virus. And it took groundbreaking law enforcement cooperation to bring its purveyors to finally face justice. But this case should serve as a wake-up call to banks and consumers alike, because cybercrime remains one of the greatest threats we face, and it is not going away anytime soon. It threatens our financial security and our national security. It threatens individuals, businesses, and governments alike. It threatens us from here in the United States, and it threatens us from abroad. And that is why investigating and prosecuting cybercrime remains a top priority for this office and for the FBI. Within the past year, we have charged a number of significant cyber cases. Among other things, we've coordinated an international takedown charging dozens of online identity thieves in over a dozen countries, and we charged a multi-million-dollar fraud ring based in Estonia. And in the year to come, you can expect us to be bringing more cases like this because it is so important. Cyber criminals believe that their online anonymity and their distance from New York render them safe from prosecution. But nothing could be further from the truth, as today's charges demonstrate. Now, as I mentioned, the kind of collaboration and cooperation that occurred on the part of the nefarious bad guys here was matched in full force by the collaboration and cooperation of law enforcement officials, not just here in the United States, but elsewhere in the world as well. And so I'm extraordinarily grateful to all of them, and I want to mention some of them by name because they are at the forefront of the fight against the cyber threat, unlike any other folks, I think, that are working in this area. First, the FBI, represented by Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office, George Venizelos. I also want to thank Special Agent in charge of the Special Operations and Cyber Branch, Mary Galligan, Assistant Special Agent in charge, Austin Berglass, Supervisory Special Agent, Kerry Davis, and Special Agents Catherine Scott, Albert Murray, and Jonathan Perlstein. I want to also thank DOJ's Computer Crime and Intellectual Property Section, with whom we jointly prosecuted the case against Mr. Panescu. I want to thank the Nassau Office of the Inspector General. And then finally, I want to thank our almost finally, our foreign law enforcement partners whose cooperation and support brought us to this point here today, especially the Latvian and Romanian law enforcement folks. Now finally, I want to thank the dedicated career prosecutors in my office for their unflagging dedication and consistently outstanding work on this case and so many others in this area. And they are Assistant U.S. Attorneys Sarah Lai and Nicole Friedlander, who are led by Deputy Chief of Cyber Crimes in our Complex Fraud Unit, Tom Brown, and Unit Chiefs Michael Bosworth and Richard Tarlow. I also want to thank DOJ Trial Attorney Carol Sipperly of the Computer Crime and Intellectual Property Section, who worked on the Panescu case. And now enough of me. I want to call to the podium George Venizelos, the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI here in New York.
Thank you, Preet. Good afternoon. The charges announced today mark a milestone in a long-term investigation that uncovered an international cyber crime ring. The three men named today, Nikita Guzman, Mihai Panescu, Denis Chalasky, played key roles in far-reaching and devastating schemes that infected at least 1 million computers worldwide and 40,000 computers in the U.S., and resulted in the theft or loss of tens of millions of dollars. The FBI's investigation began 2.5 years ago and uncovered criminal activity that began at least as far back as 2005. The principal role of Guzman, a Russian national, was developing and marketing the Gozi virus, a package of malicious software or malware that stole bank account login information like account numbers, usernames, and passwords, and sent it back to command and control servers. Initially, Guzman rented the Gozi virus for a substantial weekly fee. He advertised his 76 service on internet forums frequented by criminals and not just sophisticated cyber criminals. Since the 76 service essentially marketed Gozi as a rent-a-virus, Guzman's customers didn't need the level of computer savvy he and his co-conspirators had. Instead of this gun for hire, Guzman's operation was this virus for hire. In 2009, Guzman stopped renting the Gozi virus and began selling the source code for roughly $50,000 per customer, plus a guaranteed cut of any profits the customer made using the Gozi virus. Guzman and certain of his co-conspirators were continually modifying and upgrading Gozi to keep it virtually undetectable. It was their version of tech support. Just as commercial antivirus software is constantly updated to repel any virus, these criminals periodically tinkered with GOSI to keep it a step ahead of the newest countermeasures. Arrested in November 2010, Guzman pled guilty and became a cooperator. Gaining Guzman's cooperation was a key to this investigation. Even the most sophisticated crimes, the human element, the ability of FBI agents to gain a defendant's cooperation is a vital part of investigations. Paniscu, aka Virus, operated a so-called bulletproof hosting service. Bulletproof hosting provides criminals with IP addresses and servers designed to keep their identities hidden. Paniscu provided critical computer infrastructure not just for the GOSI virus, but also for the Zeus and SpyEye banking Trojans. He also enabled others to wage DDoS attacks, including with the prolific and damaging Black Energy. And he enabled criminal spammers to maximize the percentage of malicious spam that got through spam blocking filters and other defensive measures. Paniscu was arrested in Romania last November on our charges and is awaiting extradition. Chalovsky, aka Miami, is a Latvian trained as a programmer. He was hired by other co-conspirators of Guzman to develop web injects designed to deceive online banking customers, thereby improving the effectiveness of the GOSI virus. For example, Chalovsky has created an inject that changed the appearance of a bank's website on infected computers. Online customers were asked for additional identifying information such as social security number, mother's maiden name, driver license number, ATM card number, and date of birth. Chalovsky was arrested on U.S. charges by Latvian authorities last month and also awaits extradition. In addition to the arrest of Paniscu, our investigation resulted in the seizure of 51 servers in Romania, as well as laptops, desktops, and external hard drives. This trove of cyber criminal information constitutes more than 250 terabytes, which means more than 250 million megabytes. That vast pile of data is almost certain to aid criminal investigations in FBI offices around the country, as well as law enforcement agencies around the world. With that volume of potential evidence, plus the fact that the charging documents refer to numerous unnamed co-conspirators, it is more than standard boilerplate to say that this investigation is very much ongoing. This investigation has been a true international team effort. We owe debt of gratitude to law enforcement and intelligence authorities in Latvia, Romania, Moldova, the Netherlands, Germany, Finland, Switzerland, and the UK. We received substantial assistance from FBI offices in San Francisco and Honolulu, as well as FBI headquarters, and from NASA. Thanks always to our partners in this and so many complex investigations, U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara, and especially to U.S. Attorney Thomas Brown, Deputy Chief for Cyber, and Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Brown, and Assistant U.S. Attorneys Nicole Friedlander and Sarah Lai. Last but not least, congratulations to FBI Special Agents Catherine Scott, Albert Murray, Jonathan Perlstein, and Supervisory Special Agent Kerry Davis for their work on an investigation whose complexity and global scope were no match to their ability and determination. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Happy to take your questions. Yeah.
There were reports last year that a variant of this virus is being used to attack around 30 U.S. banks. Is that
I'm not going to comment on a news report. Yep.
How would these viruses be disguised? Can you give examples of what kind of emails people would see? Who would sort of go into these fake websites or fake pages?
You know, the charging documents don't allege with particularity the kind of spam email, but it's the typical spam that we all get in our spam boxes and sometimes make it through our spam filters that people should be, you know, aware of and be sensitive to and be careful about. You know, one thing I didn't mention and I should is, you know, as with any other kind of virus in the real world, in the medical world, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and so, you know, people need to do the basic things that people are always talking about, not just people like me, but, you know, basic, you know, computer safety. And if you get an email from someone who you don't recognize or that looks fishy to you, do not open the attachment, because that's all it took. People would open up a PDF from an otherwise seemingly innocuous email, and then their computers were infected.
So it's really the PDF or the attachment that's open that becomes the problem.
That's what we put in our charging documents. Yeah, that was the typical way it happened. Yep.
Can you give us an idea of how many U.S. bank customers actually had money stolen from their accounts, what the range of theft amounts were, and then how much money total was stolen from U.S. bank customers?
Yeah, I can't give you that amount. It's, you know, the investigation is ongoing, as I said. What we did allege, and as I mentioned in my remarks, and I think George mentioned also, we had, you know, 40,000 computers that we believe were infected here. That doesn't mean that 40,000 people's bank accounts were broken into. It's a difficult thing to try to figure, you know, the sum totals out, and the FBI and we are in the process of doing that as we speak.
Will the FDIC compensate them for any losses?
You know, in the ordinary course, if someone loses money through fraud and it's, you know, it's within the amount that their account is insured for by the FDIC, then I presume that would be true. Yeah.
Who's been cooperating all this time, and the investigation is still very much ongoing? Why these announcements now?
You know, there are law enforcement reasons why we make announcements when we make them, and why we unseal documents when we unseal them. And that's all I can say. Yeah. Yeah, you.
Question with the recent controversy and legislation with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, has that been charged here? And if not, why not?
I'm sorry, you're asking whether or not we have.
Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, has that been charged with these offenders?
Section 1030, yes.
Section 1030 has been charged, yes.
It has been charged.
Yeah.
Can you give us some detail on the NASA connection?
Yeah, there's not much that's alleged in the indictment other than to say that, you know, we became aware through the Inspector General at NASA that some of those computers were infected with the Gozi virus as well. There's not an allegation that either NASA bank accounts or people who were employed at NASA had their bank accounts, you know, pilfered. Yeah, how about you?
The Estonian ring that you mentioned also allegedly victimized NASA. Is that a coincidence, or is there a link between the two?
Yeah, I'm not going to say beyond what's in the indictments. I'm not going to draw a link. Yeah.
One of the complaints mentions a large financial institution based in New York that is a target of the scheme. Is there a certain reason why that particular large institution is targeted?
Not that I can say, and there's no reason to think that it was targeted for any particular. Remember, what was people were targeting people's computers and trying to see where they were going, and I wouldn't assume necessarily that any particular bank was being targeted, although that may be the case. Yeah.
Mr. Venizelos, as you know, Secretary Clinton is testifying today on Capitol Hill in Benghazi on what happened, but it seems like the FBI hasn't made any progress yet in finding out. Are you committed in your pledge to find out who did this, and do you know who did the attack? Who committed the attack?
We're definitely committed, but we're not going to discuss that now. We're committed to the attack.
Are you any further in the investigation?
I'm not prepared to discuss that now.
Okay. Last question. Yeah.
All the law enforcement and intelligence agencies that you mentioned, no one mentioned Russian authorities or intelligence. They didn't cooperate with Michael at all?
You know, I'm not sure if I mentioned before, but Mr. Kuzmin was arrested while he was in the United States, so you know, the necessity of that cooperation was not necessarily apparent in this case. Last question.
Has his cooperation allowed you to neutralize the Gozi virus?
What his cooperation has allowed us to do, as you might suspect, is be able to hold more people accountable, and the investigation is ongoing, and that's all I'll say about that. Thanks very much, everybody.